Now in chapter 11, the creature begins to tell his story. And he talks about what happened after his first face-to-face meeting with vis-a-vis his father and Victor's absconding, running away. And the creature says that he left the house, the apartment house, and I covered himself with some clothes. Now this kind of begs the question of how did he know this? Was it instinct that he needed to cover himself? Shelley doesn't explain this, and there are some little lapses like that. So we're just going to take them with a grain of salt, and we're going to move on. Now, in this chapter, I'm not going to read a lot of quotes like I have in the previous chapters. I'm just going to kind of recap what happened and talk about how it applies to monsterhood. Now, the creature moves into the woods, going back into the natural state and returning to the original Mother Nature. And as he wanders about, he sees the moon for the first time, and hunger sends him to, eat berries and roots and so on and so on. And then he discovers fire. And I don't mean from the sense that he's, doing flints and he discovers fire, but he discovers that you can cook food on fire from some travelers that were passing by. And he begins to utilize it. He also finds that it is beneficial and it is bad. And this shows the duality of not only fire, but of Victor and of the creature himself. Victor and the creature are both good, and yet they are both evil in a way. Victor would protest that he isn't evil, and Victor's evilness is not the overt evil of killing someone or murdering someone, more like a sin of omission, and sin is not a good word there, but that is the best way that I can come up with it. And he keeps wandering, keeps going through the woods. And by the way, we never hear of the creature eating meat. He eats nuts, he eats berries, he eats roots. But throughout the whole book, we never hear of him killing an animal in order to eat it. He is a vegetarian, which is quite interesting in the great scheme of things. Now, as he is wandering along, he begins to encounter people. And in one, he goes into a hut, and there's an old man there, and the old man gets up and runs away. And the creature doesn't know why at this point. And then he wanders into a village, which is a very squalid village. But he is run away. He is attacked and run out of the village because of the way he looks. And what I want to ask you is, at this point, is he a monster? Now, several of you in the assignment about Grendel said that you didn't think that Grendel was originally a monster, that Grendel was shunned by society because of the way he looked. And if that is the case, then how does that apply to the creature? He is perceived to be a monster just because of his appearance. But at this point, he is not going against the ethics of the culture by which Campbell defines a true monster. And he continues to wander after he runs away. He has no place to call home or to rest. Now, in the movie, the first movie, the 1930s movie, it is during this period of his life that he wanders into the hut of the old man who is blind and says friend and finds out about fire. Total Hollywood, folks. Doesn't have anything to do with the book. But at any rate, his wandering finally comes to an end for at least a while when he goes into this lean-to that is connected to but not a part of a cottage. And he kind of makes himself a nest there, and through a hole in the wall, he can observe what is going on in the house. And he sees a young man and a young woman and an older man whom he later perceives to be blind. And these people are fascinating to him. They're beautiful and they love each other. And he sees how a family should act and how Victor refused to interact with him. Now, there is a big lapse here. And from the lapse that I'm talking about, it's not a lapse in time, but a little bit of lapse of, a big lapse on Mary Shelley's explanation of the creature and how he manages to get along. At this point, the creature cannot speak, and he cannot understand speech. How then is he cognitively thinking? He's being run along, he's going on instinct. But as we see is in the end of chapter 11 and then into chapter 12, he begins to understand things. For example, in chapter 12, he starts to bring them food. How does he know to do this if he can't cognitively think through his actions? So there's a little bit of a question there of how much intellectuality does he have? And by intellectuality, I'm not talking about his ability to read and write, but to understand his surroundings, because he seems to have a little bit more cognitive reasoning than what a newborn would have, which is what he is. Well, a lot more, not just a little. I also want to point out that earlier in the book, Victor talked about how humans would be better off if they were like the brutes. If they did not understand, if they did not philosophize, if all they did was just eat, sleep, and drink, and so on. At this point, this is what this creature is. He is a brute. Now, he's not really too well off because these other humans from the village have run him off. Would he be better off if he stayed in a state of unknowing? Would Adam and Eve have been better off if they had not eaten of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Because it is when the creature begins to understand language by observing the people in the cottage that he truly begins to understand how truly miserable and truly wretched he is. Now, I know I'm getting a little bit ahead there, but I want you to think about that. He has problems right now, but they are not problems of the soul. They are problems of the body. And also, I want to pose the question to you, does the creature have a soul? Now, some of you might be atheist. Now, that's fine. We are not looking at it from a religious point of view and trying to determine whether humans have souls or whether religion is right or wrong. But in the context of the book and of nature and from where Shelley is coming from, would the creature have a soul? What does that say about the creation of a mortal male mother?